Monday's lesson points us to consider the Sabbath and justice. And how does the Sabbath connect to justice? And it points us to three Sabbaths. The weekly Sabbath, the yearly Sabbath, every 7 years they would let the land lay fallow, and the Jubilee Sabbath, every 50th year, the Jubilee Sabbath. What do we learn about justice from the Sabbaths? Well, let's go on the 50th one, for sure, the slaves go, okay. The weekly one, yearly one, let's start with the weekly one.
Restoration of your body and soul.
And even your animals might rest. That's what it's.
Okay, so there was definitely an aspect of rest on that Sabbath day. But I'm going to challenge you guys. As you think about this, and you think about the justice of these Sabbaths, what law lens are you looking through? Is this imposed law, or is this design law with the Sabbaths? Let's look at the weekly first. Is the primary element of the Sabbath, weekly Sabbath, the primary element in the commandment, one of avoiding physical exertion, called work, or one of remembering something? What's the primary element of the Sabbath?
Remember.
Oh, remembering, thinking, attending one's mind toward what? Toward God, toward strengthening our relation with Him, toward connecting with Him. The injunctions about not working are primarily to allow people time to remember, to not be so distracted with work that they can't remember, that they can't connect, they can't think. And as we are to remember, the lesson points out the Sabbath is helping us remember creation and redemption. Well, what are the laws that creation are built upon? They're the design laws. And we come back to remember our designer. And then how was redemption accomplished? By actually fixing what Adam broke in humanity. Again, design laws. So remember, the Sabbath is not an arbitrary rule, and when it's presented that way, it's a day without any purpose other than God is testing your obedience. Will you obey or will you not obey? And we make it into an imperial law like human law. We destroy the purpose of the Sabbath. The Sabbath's real intent is for you to exercise your mind, law of exertion, in remembering and connecting with God and develop and grow with Him. This is why in Isaiah you can't be a Sabbath keeper unless you call the Sabbath a delight. And while we can use coercion to cause your child who hates broccoli to eat their broccoli, can you make them enjoy it? You see, you can't make somebody enjoy the Sabbath. That has to come from the heart. And Jesus commented on that when they talked about criticizing Him for what He was doing on the Sabbath. He said, my Father's working all the time. The sun doesn't stop shining, the rain doesn't stop falling. My Father's working all 7 days of the week, on the righteous and the unrighteous. So He's always doing that. But tying it together further, what was the purpose of creating the Sabbath? It was a day constructed, built. And God actually did something different on the Sabbath than He did the other 6 days. God actually expended energy to create and build new stuff on the 6 days, showing what? God is powerful. That's power. That's right there. That's serious power right there. Day 7, though, God steps back from the exercise of power and creates a day of liberty to think and to reason. Remember, remember, remember. Yeah.
I appreciate this explanation of Sabbath, and I fully intend to keep it as long as I have a brain to think with, I have an associate who believes that the Sabbath is determined by the first moon every month, and so it changes every day. Every seventh day then becomes a different day.
Yeah, I actually addressed that in a Sabbath school class about a year and a half ago. Email me. I will email you a link to that lesson where I actually expose that that's just completely based on a bunch of fallacies. Okay? That's just every idea they have that base that law is just false. Okay? And it's easy to expose, but we won't go into it. But email me and I'll send you the link to that lesson. Okay? So what about the yearly Sabbath now? We see the weekly Sabbath is design law. What about the yearly Sabbath? What was the reason for letting the land lie fallow every 7 years? To regenerate the nitrogen that had been depleted from the use.
There's also forgiving. Not forgiving, but forgiving. So that whatever plants or whatever fruit sprung up just on its own without being planted and cultivated, it was for
anybody.
Anyone.
Yep, not Anybody could take it out of the field on the 7th year.
The passerby, the traveler, whatever, is that, I'm hungry. I'm going to go eat. I'm going to grab a handful of wheat.
And so we see the design law, the nitrogen cycle, and built right in. And God is this. So this is design. What about the Jubilee? Imposed law, design law.
It was a wonderful restoration because not only did they do the normal 7-year thing where the year with the land was rested, but everybody was restored their own property. Those who were slaves were freed. There was
Right.
a whole year of that's.
And so what's the purpose? So what's the purpose? Remember the context. 1 Corinthians 4:9, we are theater, a spectacle to angels and to men. Israel, did you have to be an Israelite to be saved in Old Testament times?
No.
No, it was not an exclusive pathway to salvation to be an Israelite. Many people were saved who were never part of Israel. Okay? So what was the purpose of Israel? Avenue for Messiah, and also actors on a stage. They had a theater, a grand stage called the temple or sanctuary. They had costumes. They had a script. Some call it scripture. But they had a script. And they needed to follow that script, because in that script was a object lesson teaching God's true plan to heal. And you will find in the history of Israel many object lessons being carried out. One of them is in the Jubilee. So this is an object lesson scripted to reveal a larger design reality. And the larger design reality is that through Jesus Christ we will be set free from the slavery to sin. And when we restored to the meek shall inherit what? The earth. We will be restored to an earth made new. That's the object lesson, which is design law. He will redesign and reconstruct and rebuild his earth back to the way he originally intended it. So all of them, again, come back to design. The fullest, richest understanding is when we see it under design law. Any questions about any of that? Tuesday's lesson.